Today, we have an amazing opportunity to speak to the fantastic Katrina Friel about her life story, about how she got into coaching. I can't wait to tap into her valuable experience, but more than that, Katrina, a pleasure to meet you. I'd love to know, a little bit more about you, a little bit more about how you got into this space, and then we can have a deep dive into some of those questions that everyone wants to find out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. It's been awesome. It's awesome so far. Hello from Sydney, Australia.
Wow, amazing. And me and Dan are based in the UK, and that's a great start. It's amazing how you can work online and build these relationships with people, halfway across the world. So
yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. So how did you get into this space? What was the real inspiration?
Well, my last job, I was starting to have a little look-see around, and weirdly enough, and I don't want to sort of make you feel bad or anything, but I had this really bad, like a terrible pain in my stomach. And I said to my friend at work, oh, look, I've got to go to the doctor. And so I toddled down to the doctor, and I think it's just a given they do a pregnancy test. And it was so random. And she goes, you're pregnant, out of the blue, and hadn't even thought of it before. And I had never wanted children in my life. And I'd known that since I was 16. So I knew I was a career girl. That was my future as far as I was concerned. Anyway, fast forward through the next 10 weeks, and I ended up having a miscarriage. And just within that moment, I was probably in a very weak state emotionally. And I saw this ad in the paper. And in those days, I don't know if you remember, but everything was black and white back in those days, 30 odd years ago. And this ad was full color, and it felt like my name was written on it. You apply for this job as a coach, as an executive coach. So I applied, and long and the short of it is that I ended up getting ripped off $30,000, which for me in those days was a lot of money. And my husband puts it down to the fact that I just had the miscarriage, and I was sort of not in my right frame of mind. I wasn't using my intuition correctly. In fact, when you meet the guy, he was a complete idiot, and I knew it from the start. But for some reason, I just wanted to change. I wanted to leave the corporate world. I wanted to be a coach. They said all the right things in the ad, and boom, off I went. But me and all these other people that had signed up were all looking at each other after a little while going, oh dear, is this what we think it is? And we're like, oh God, we've been scammed. They've got absolutely nothing. And the reason I now do what I do is because of that situation. So now what I do is it's all about value. It's all about value stacking. And when people see what I value stack within the program and what they pay one price for, they're blown away. And in fact, that's one of my kind of objections, is that it's too good to be true, because there's just so much value stacking there. So in a way, everything that happens to you, there's a story to be had. And as a coach, every story becomes a learning opportunity for your clients. So I'm no exception to that. So transitioning from corporate executive to my own business, and there was a learning there, because it's hard to transition, but I seem to be forced into it. It just happened overnight. And the other lesson from the scam was that I had this incredible experience with my my solicitor. I wanted to go to court. I wanted to go and claim the money, and I was very, very adamant about that. And my solicitor said to me, can I ask you just one question? And I said, yeah, sure. He goes, well, did you learn a $30,000 lesson? And within that one moment in time, my whole body, like in the Matrix, just went completely changed. And I realized I had learned a $30,000 lesson. In fact, that lesson has stayed with me over these last 30 years of doing it. And the lesson is that I had everything I needed inside of myself. I didn't need this wanker. I didn't need this idiot. Why was I following along? Like, he had nothing. I had everything that I needed. And so the rest is history, and that's my little story. I've just sort of combined a couple of stories in there for you, just to, because we don't have a heap of time. So hopefully
wow, that's amazing. The $30,000 lesson. I think there's so much you can pick up from that, and I think that's a real great take home for this subject that we're going to talk about today. You know, building it. You come under this impression that you think you're going to build it, put a website out, and people are going to come. But also, there are so many charlatans in this business, so many false prophets, isn't there? You know.
Yeah.
And me and Dan worked out, you know, that there's 50,000 new ICF coaches every year that have this great qualification. They go in there. 86% of them will quit or fail in their first year because of that same thing. And there's so much that you can learn from that lesson, isn't there? So much that you can learn about, actually, I could do it myself. I had the skills, I had the knowledge, I had the, you know, and that's
I had people skills. He didn't have people skills. So I was ahead of the game just with people skills. You know, I could relate to anybody. And I think where I learnt that from was being in the bars. When I used to first left school and I was working in a pub, and I went on to work in lots and lots of different pubs back when I was sort of 18, 19, 20 or so. And what I learnt there was how to deal with just about anybody. And that was a great skill that I took right through, that I still use to this day. I'm able to, I don't know, understand people and what makes them tick very, very quickly. And I reckon that comes from the bars. I really do.
Yeah, you know, for me, like, you can't lead others down a path if you haven't walked it yourself. And I think that leads so well into things like working into bars and pubs, those interactions, those experiences that you have. Katrina, that's an amazing story. Dan, there's so much that we can pick up on that, isn't there, in terms of today's subject. I think a good place to start is why do so many coaches fail in your experience? You know, why do so many coaches fall into this coach trap? Katrina, Dan, I think that'd be a great discussion for you guys.
I think often it's like it's a lack of patience, because it's so easy to kind of make up results, get paid retweets, all of this stuff, but it's not sustainable. So there's so many, as you said, so many charlatans. You've got to pick a path, and a lot of people pick the wrong path and end up crashing and burning because they weren't patient at the start, because it takes a long time to build a great thing, obviously. So yeah, I think that's definitely a big lesson there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
I would say what I've seen with women particularly is they can't stand being alone, and they've been in these teams in corporate for a long time. So they come out of business and they end up jumping in with each other, and there's no profit in that. They're much better off standing on their own 2 feet, being a solopreneur, and really cutting their teeth with only them as the focus. Whereas when you bring in a second person, you're not only halving the profits, but you're also diluting the message. So they're saying one thing and you're saying another thing, and of course it's probably aligned, but still the client at the end of the day has to pick which path to go down. And if it's not you, then you know, you'll soon see who the preference is. But I believe for women, they're to go it alone in that first sort of 10 years. Now, not saying that I say to people, do projects together, get in, get out. Don't start partnerships together, because that's a lot harder to get out. And as a coach, I've had to unravel a whole bunch of partnerships from my clients over the years. And it's messy. It's so bloody messy. It's awful. So I really want people to not be scared of going it alone. And yes, doing joint ventures, doing projects, but don't sign up full time. Just get in, get out, do the project, do the retreat, do the whatever, and get out. And see how it goes.
Yeah, that's such great advice.
Yeah.
That's amazing. There's one thing that I picked up on. I love your message, and I love the way that you project it. This energy is amazing. But one thing that I really picked up on was this business witches. And I've spoke to people about that before, by the way, and I've noticed that there is something in that now. Something's growing in with that word, isn't it, in particular? Like, I think I spoke to 3 or 4 coaches in the last 6 months that are like coming into this witches idea. Really interesting. I actually live in the part of the UK where I live in Essex is really famous for for witches, you know, so which makes me laugh, you know, a lot. So tell me a little bit more about that. Where did the idea come from? You know, because for me, if me and Dan are going to look at that, you know, that's a niche down, Dan. Would you agree that like that's going down a certain angle? But Katrina, I'd love to know a little bit more about where that come from.
Well, my business is the original business that I've been operating for is called Becoming the Expert. But what I found was I kept getting clients that were really spiritual. And so I just did a test just to see if I called myself Business Witch, even though it's the same program, if I called myself Business Witch, would that make any difference? And the sales go through the roof, because suddenly what I do is like magic. So why don't I just lean into the fact that what I do is like magic? And, you know, there's no harm in sort of leaning into Business Witch. If you have a look at the stats on Witch Talk and how witchcraft and the practice of witch, anything to do with sort of the spiritual side of it, feminism, all that is all women and witches and everyone stepping into their own power. That's what we want for women. That's where it's heading. And men have to meet us there now. So we're asking men to meet us there at our own power rather than what the history has shown us to be over the years. So I just thought I'd do a test. And that's what business is just running tests and running experiments. And so I experimented and it just took off. And so I thought, well, I'll keep Becoming the Expert because that's for my normal people, and then keep Business Witch and just reveal which brand is best for the client that reaches out, or however they find me. It doesn't really matter. It's the same program. That's what's interesting here is that I've been in business for 30 years and look at me, I'm still experimenting. I'm still developing new brands for what I do. And that's what business is, Dan. Don't you reckon? We're just going to keep on doing experiments for the rest of our bloody lives.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's interesting that no one that I know actually knows what they were going to do. Like if you asked them 5 years ago what they're doing now, they've got no idea. They wouldn't have ever guessed it. But I think something I'd add to that is if you're experienced like you, this is like this perfect branding thing. If you've got no experience, if you've got no case studies or anything like that, and you're kind of trying to build some different, unique brand, it's not going to work. It's like you can't patch up that. You've got to have the solid foundation first, and then you can go ham with the brand and experiment.
I love that.
And what you're saying is that what we've seen, you would have seen it, I've seen it, is people chop and change, and never really actually build anything. And that's an absolute problem. You've really got to hunker down. You've got to lean in. You've got to dig in and get ready to get experience and get those results for the client. And once you've got 2 or 3 results and outcomes that you can talk about and those clients can talk about for you, then you might have something. But I find a lot of people have what I call shiny pebble syndrome. So they can't pick a pen. And so when they come to me and I do like a free discovery session with them, I love those because I can pick a pen and help them pick a pen. Whereas they don't. They've got this, you know, those texters where you've got 36 different colors in a pack. Well, that's what their head is like. And they're going, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, la, 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 la. And they just get overwhelmed and then do nothing or try to do it all in one go. No, pick a pen. And that's what we in the biz world call niching, I suppose.
Love that. Love that. There's something I really picked up on this. We spoke off air about the difference between type A and type B, introvert, extrovert. And there's something that I think we can link to that point really, really well. I know why you've picked that Business Witches thing. Dan knows. We know because we've done this for a few years. Like why me and Dan picked the coach trap concept, because we started off in coaching, Dan, didn't we? And then other coaches were asking us for advice. And I thought, you know, we have to make this into something. The coach trap coin was there to build intrigue, to get people to ask questions. And that's what happens, Dan, isn't it? We get questions, what is the coach trap? What is this? What does that mean? And that's what we wanted it to be. And with that business witches, with that become the expert, it's the same thing, isn't it? You want them to relate, resonate, build interest. It's all those great things. But for me, that really leans into that. What me and Dan have found is that great coaches don't make great marketers. Marketers don't make great coaches. The difference between this introvert, extrovert, type A and type B, to become good in this business or to have success or to have longevity, you've got to go straight down the middle and be a bit of both, right? I think that's a great discussion between you two. Katrina, when did you have this like light bulb moment? Tell us a bit more about that introvert, extrovert concept.
Well, no matter what I was doing, whether I was training, speaking on the stage or coaching or whatever, there was always one person that would come up and say, I want to do what you do. And I started to think, well, what do I do? I have no idea. What I discovered in my natural skill set was that I could do extrovert activities and introverted activities. And now I've built a whole career about working with introverts, and I know straight away what their problems are going to be. And then when I work with extroverts, I know exactly what their problems are going to be. Now, introverts, they are going to pick coaching as their career because coaching in its purest form is one-on-one, intimate relationships. That's what they love. They'll say things like, oh, I get really nervous if it's more than 3 people or whatever. And they're very good also at being writing a book. So when I see an introvert, I know straight away I'll have no trouble writing their book with them, no trouble with the coaching piece. But where they will fail and where they will struggle is they can't get on the stage and speak about it, which means they are the world's best kept secret. Nobody knows about them because they're terrible marketers and they can't take their baby out into the world. Now, extroverts, happy to get up on stage and ramble on about whatever, but they haven't done the due diligence. They haven't done the rigor of writing their book, writing their coaching program, writing their $10,000 signature program. They have to sit down, focus, shut up and do the work because they're going to have no trouble when I get to the keynote speaking bit and getting them up on stage. So to me, business, those that are really successful in business actually are multiverts. They're able to do the rigor, focus at home, do the job, get cross the T's, dot the I's, do the rigor, etc. They're also able to take their baby out into the world and talk about it, and i.e. sell it to the world. And if you can't do both, you really are going to struggle. And coaches, because it's about coaching trap, one of the coaching traps is they set up their business, they put their shingle out, and then they just wait.
Yeah, that's
and
so.
we know you can hope for the best, but it will be a big fat failure, and they'll wonder why nobody's knocking their door down. It's because they can't speak about it. They're too shy, too introverted.
I love that. Dan, do you know what? You're going to love this, Katrina, right? One of the things that me and Dan I've worked out from working with Dan, you talked about something about partnerships earlier, is me and Dan are that like yin and yang, right? Where Dan sees things real black and white. He's a master at, marketing and whatever. I have all these great ideas, but I don't quite know how to put them out there. And it's interesting you talk about that difference between type A and type B. I see that a lot in mine and Dan's relationship. Dan, any thoughts on that? I think there's a lot you can pick up on why so many people sort of come into this and don't last. And we see that, Dan, don't we, every week?
I think it relates a lot to the Ordopia coaches that we've been working with on the podcast. Most of those are introverts, and they're really struggling with the marketing. They really can't do the DMs. They don't want to get in front of people and feel salesy and stuff like that. They do so well on YouTube, stuff like that. We've had clients in the past that have really blown up on YouTube and on video content on LinkedIn as well, just because we really pushed them to do it, and they ended up being able to do it. It's a skill, really. It's not like it's your mind holding you back almost, I feel like. So definitely lean into those two sides are extremely advantageous. Yeah,
that's a really good point. And Katrina, I've got a really good question for you now, actually. One of the things that I realized from working with Dan, one of the things I realized from experience, when you get into this, and you fall into the coach trap. I think a lot of people think coaching is just one-to-one. Zoom, you know, you're going to speak to them, have an accountability group. Then you realize, Dan, there are so many different ways to boil an egg. There's YouTube videos. You know, there's no way that Tony Robbins is doing one-to-one sessions. He's doing big live shows and auditoriums, you know, and James Smith has, you know, mentorship programs and stuff like that on School or whatever it might be. That's what we realized, didn't we? That there's many ways, and actually some coaches' face, their image, the way they project things, the way they work, sometimes suits different concepts, not quite one-to-ones, but better at audio courses or better at communities or whatever it might be. Katrina, what's your thoughts on this, and what's your sort of like magic touch? Have you worked out like what's your best way to harness that energy and put that across to people?
Well, my philosophy is that there's 7 streams of income to go get. And the first one is the book. But if you earn $5,000 from a book, you're in the top 1% of the world income-wise. So there's no money in books. But what the book does, it still has gravitas to this day. So it has what we call it positions you as the expert. No book, you're not the expert. You haven't done the rigor. You haven't decided who am I and what do I stand for. Go write that down. And then from there, with the book, you can actually there's a year's worth of social media in there, and every chapter is a YouTube post, and every chapter and every subchapter is a blog, and so on and so forth. So if you just write the book, I tell you what, there's a lot you can repurpose within that. So that's a revenue stream number 1. Next one is speaking. So when you stand up and speak as like a keynote speaker or like a TED talk, what happens is you get all the leads you could possibly imagine. Whereas because in that one moment, you are important in their lives and they're learning from you. Whereas the rest of the time, the minute you leave that situation, they've forgotten all about you. They go back to their normal lives. So you've got to speak. And I do podcasts as well as speaking on stage. Now, you could argue, I think it's about 50-50 where I get my leads from, but it doesn't really matter as long as you're speaking. And I don't even call it speaking. It's educating. And the book will open the doors and the speaking will make you a star. And so you've got to be speaking. They're the first 2. And so I use those 2, the book and the speaking, as my sales and marketing strategy, essentially, in a nutshell. And that's what I teach. From there, you create a signature program that could be $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. How many of those do you need to sell in a year to double the income that you were earning in your JOB? So think about that. And you don't need a lot. That's what I love about it. Signature programs, high ticketed items are the way to go in my view, because it's just as hard to manage 100 people that paid you $27 as it is to manage 20 people that paid you $20,000. So to me, and it's just as easy to sell that as it is, you know, the $27 people actually are more trouble than they're worth. They want everything for free. You know, they want all your time and energy, and there's just not a lot in it, in my view. So that's the third revenue stream. Now we go into coaching and mentoring. That's the 4th and the 5th revenue stream. And then we go into facilitating and consulting. That's the 6th and the 7th income stream. Wow. So what I do is I create an entire personal brand around that with those 7 streams of income within it. And, you know, they can just get on with it. And we build that all within like 90 days. So wow. It is just like magic.
I love that. I learned a lot just listening to that. I was dialed in. Dan, anything you want to add to that? Anything, because obviously we talked a little bit before we come on about AI in coaching and ways to integrate that. Dan, you got any more ideas for that? Anything that you would add?
I would personally say don't use AI to make these posts. I mean, obviously you can do it in 90 days when you're not even using AI. You're doing all of the work yourself. And like you said, repurposing as well. The book is amazing for that. Even emails and stuff. You can get so many LinkedIn posts, so many tweets out of that. One thing I did pick up on is you said job as JOB. What's that?
Well, I'm being facetious when I say JOB. I'm saying it's a job. You know, you're leaving your corporate job. Everyone wants to. 75% of people want to leave their corporate jobs. So the easy next step is to become an expert in your field of excellence. And so that's what I exist for. I try to capture them at that time before they leave, because I want to run a dual strategy with them where they stay in their JOB, stay in their job, let that fund you while we build this in the background as a side hustle, we would call it, so that you're not under any financial stress. The problem is all these self-help, personal development people go, oh my God, believe in yourself. Just jump off the cliff and build the parachute on your way down. Please do not do that. It'll put you under a lot of stress. You'll end up having to take whatever money you can from people that you don't want to work with, and you'll end up in a misery bucket, I promise you, within 6 months. Don't do that. I say run a dual strategy, keep your job, build it, run a dual strategy, and then when the business has proved itself to you, you can then start to think about an exit strategy and what's appropriate for your ecology. You have a mortgage, you have kids in school, you have cars to pay for. I mean, there's stuff that you need to be very, very careful of. And in this day and age, we're coming into the so-called, you know, the next sort of recession phase of our existence. We don't know what's coming. So be sensible. I'm a low risk type of gal. I've already lost my money right up front. And what I want to do is get them at that stage where they haven't left their job, which means they haven't wasted $75,000 and they haven't wasted 5 years of their life yet. Wow. When I get them at that stage, they appreciate me because they know the pain they've just been through in the last 5 years. And I do get them, the ones that haven't left and the ones that have done 5 years. These ones don't know what they don't know. They have never experienced it. So they think when they work with me, it's just, you know, it's like this all the time for them. Whereas the other people have been burnt, they've wasted time, they've wasted money. They've been with these coaches and this mastermind group, and everyone took their money, but no one delivered anything. And so I believe in a done for you model because they don't know what they don't know. Why do you make them build it? I don't understand. So I do it all for them. I build it all. So that all just gets done rather than, you know, stuffing around trying to watch 100 different videos on how to build a website. I mean, God, how awful.
Yeah, that's amazing. We've got something in common. The creating of the net to catch the fish, I would say. And it's interesting actually how you've been really clear in the sort of person that you're looking for. Me and Dan are as well, by the way. We have a certain criteria for types that we either cold DM or we're looking to aim posts at, for example. Dan, anything you want to add to that? Because obviously we are really clear, aren't we, in the sort of type that we want to work with, the sort of person that we want it to resonate with. And any tips for anyone watching this, Dan, or listening, take homes that they can try out?
Yeah, I love that. I think it really forces you as well to be efficient as well with your business and what you're putting your time into. I think everyone's got to niche down at some point, because if you don't know who you're targeting, then who you're targeting definitely doesn't know that you're targeting them. So you've got to really be clear on that. It's like trying to catch water with a sieve instead of a cup. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think that's really good advice.
Yeah, there's really good advice. Katrina, I can tell you our sweet spot if you want, what we aim for. And then, you know, we might have some common ground in this. What me and Dan aim for is the coaches that have maybe been out there for 6 months to a year. And you can see that they've done, like we've talked about here, build it and they will come. They put up their website, they put these Canva posts up of a mountain with a quote or whatever, right? And then they realize actually it doesn't come.
On top of the mountain.
That's it. So me and Dan noticed this a lot. And I'll be honest, that was me. So when I left this job and I thought, you know, I already had clients through word of mouth. Then I realized this is incredibly hard to actually attract people in the right way. And me and Dan noticed those mistakes, hone our posts at them, you know, or cold DM or our lead magnets or whatever. And it's really interesting that you say, and I think you only get that from experience.
Yeah.
Have you got any other tips? Any other?
I
So
call that corralling. So when
Yeah.
I look at my client's avatar, ideal person, we do a lot of work on this. We spend time really digging in to what they look like. I can see mine walking towards me. Like I know what they're going to say. I know their concerns, their issues. I know everything. And the minute they start to talk, I know, there's my avatar. And they're everywhere. But before they left, are hard to corral. There's no corralling them. They could be anywhere. Whereas you guys have got what I call a great corral. You can see anyone that calls themselves a coach, they're in your corral. Like there they are. They're easy to Google. They're easy to LinkedIn search. They're everywhere. They're just simply everywhere. I mean, there is thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of coaches I've seen over the last 30 years. I've seen that industry boom. And everyone has sold them coaching courses. But what I find offensive is nobody taught them the business of coaching. They taught them how to coach in their 10-day course or their 12-month course or whatever it is. And they came out going, great, I can coach, but do they know how to run a business? And that's what we're all, Daniel's here for, you're here for, I'm here for, is to give them the other side going, you've got great skills, you can definitely coach, well done you, but you can't sign up a client, you can't sell, you can't market. And so they've got to be, in my view, positioned correctly, packaged correctly, and priced correctly. And that's what I do in my program, and in your program, I'm sure they need to be positioned a certain way. Who do you want to work with? You don't want to work for everyone. You just don't. I swear to God, you do not. So anyone that says I can work with everyone is kidding themselves. And Daniel, how many times have we heard it? I can help everybody. It's like the worst thing we can ever hear. We hate it, don't we?
Yeah, you end up, those people always have no clients as well. It's funny. You help everybody, but you help nobody. So yeah, that's funny.
You've got to be very specific. And so think about, even if you don't know who you want to work with, think about who you don't want to work with and start from there. When you do the opposite of going, I don't want to work with men, or I don't want to work with women, or I don't want to work with, do the opposite of. Often that's easier for people to get them started thinking about who they don't want to work with. And then it can start to reveal itself. Who would really make you want to get up in the morning for? And I don't know about you, but when I start talking about how I help people, I light up. I literally light up. And so I can't wait to help people. But I help people in a very specific way. And that's what they've got to come to. They've got to come to that place where they know who gives them joy when you work with them, who's got the money to pay you, and who needs you, who needs your services, your unique way of looking at the world. Your philosophy is what I like to put together. I want people to discover their philosophy. And that's what we do in the program, is we discover what their philosophy is, what they stand for, who they can help, who they want to help. These are the conversations you have when you work with a business mentor.
That's amazing. And I resonate so much with some of that stuff that you said. It's really interesting. I think if you'd have told me and Dan 4 or 5 years ago that we would have communities and be mentoring groups of other coaches, we would have laughed at, wouldn't we? It's funny how that comes to you, and then that niche is there for you. It's almost like your face, accent, the way you are resonates. I never thought I'd be coaching relationships, by the way. I do that every week. I never knew that when I got into this world. It just seems to find you, which is really
it's written in the stars as far as I'm concerned. I think each person has their own destiny, and you can find your destiny in your astrology. You could just go there and have a little look-see, but you'll find whatever it is we're doing, whatever it is we're attracting, it's all been almost predestined. And what you want to do is have a look at the clues that you've left throughout your life. whatever your problems were, whatever your struggles were, end up being your medicine that you share with the world. And so it's really ironic that that happens like that, but it does. And you've seen over the last 20, 30 years that people build a business on what they've been through. Their own personal story, their own personal brand develops from that story because they've learned how to deal with it. Now teach others how to deal with it.
Wow. That's incredible. Incredible. Dan, for me, I've noticed so many similarities between us and Katrina. You got anything you want to add there?
I think we're almost like Katrina's also almost one person, us two in one person, if that makes sense. It's really weird. But yeah, how do you add to that? That's experience talking. I'm just rubbing my hands at the clips, to be honest.
I've loved it. I've been dialed. One thing I've noticed as well, every time you talk, I dial in. Not everyone's got that, by the way. Not everyone's got that skill to, that you want to listen. Every time you talk, I'm like, I'm zoomed in, which is a skill in itself, isn't it? But Katrina, amazing stuff. Katrina, where can people find you? Where's the best place to find your message?
I think if we want to be normal, let's go becomingtheexpert.com.au. And if this has resonated and if you are feeling like you are dialed in, quite often your body will tell you the right mentor, the right coach, the right person for you in the next step in your journey. So if you feel that calling inside of your body, please listen to it because I haven't been put in front of you for no reason. To me, that's magic. To me, that's destiny. So don't talk yourself out of it. In business, you want to be able to talk yourself into things. And at the very least, just have a cup of tea with me. Let me have a rummage about. I promise you it won't hurt, but you may cry because you may unpack your destiny.
Love that. Love that. Katrina, thank you so much for joining me and Dan today. Absolutely loved it. I was dialed in right from the start, and I'm pretty sure we'll speak again because I learned a lot listening to that, which is amazing. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of The Coach Trap. And remember, whatever you do, don't fall into the coach trap.